Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I hope you are all doing very well today. I wanted to take this opportunity to talk to you about something a little bit different, although not quite different. Let me explain. I have been getting a lot of comments about all sorts of movies. Very great comments, as always, from a lot of viewers like yourself, and I really appreciate it. And I get comments about this movie or that movie, asking if I've seen a particular film or recommending a certain film for me, or maybe someone is talking about how a particular film meant something special to him or her. And I really love those. And I've had the great honor of reading a lot of these great comments from many people. And it gives me a little glimpse into your background and your tastes and your habits and the things that you like, and sometimes maybe something about your upbringing or childhood. Sometimes you talk about films that have a particular connection to a memory in your life. And I thought that was really great. And over the course of my time here on YouTube, I have talked about certain memories I've had of going to the theater, or certain scares I've had, or certain thrills I've had the pleasure of experiencing and watching films. It's one of the great things about cinema. That's why I love it. But I thought today I'd do something a little bit different, which was I thought I'd just share with you a particular memory or association that I have with a specific film. And this is based on my own upbringing and how I came to experience a certain film. So let me just talk to you about one film. I'm not going to go over the entire thing. It's not an overview or a review of the Blu-ray or anything. But this is just a little story that I wanted to share with you about this film. This is the film Once Upon a Time in the West, Sergio Leone film. And this is a Western. It's one of the greatest Westerns I've ever had the pleasure of seeing. It is truly a remarkable work in many ways. If you haven't seen it, I strongly urge you to watch it, because you are really in for a magnificent treat. Once Upon a Time in the West, Sergio Leone. But I urge you, if you haven't seen it, to watch it as cold as possible. Do not read any synopsis. Do not even look at the back of the Blu-ray. Just watch it. Trust me, this is a film that I think you want to go in as cold as possible, knowing as little as possible about any of the details. Just know it's a Western. There's some gunplay, there's some violence like that, but it's still a very entertaining, rich, deep-rooted, compelling drama and action Western film. So if you haven't seen the film, I urge you to do so, again, without knowing or knowing as little as possible when you decide to watch it. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a specific memory that I have with this film. So if you haven't seen it, please stop this video now, because I am going to be talking about a specific part of this which might be considered a spoiler for those of you who haven't seen the film. So I urge you, please, if you haven't seen the film, stop this video now, and then you can watch this film Once Upon a Time in the West, and then afterwards you can come back and I can share with you the memory that I have of this film. Okay, so you're here, so that means you have seen the film, or, well, I'm assuming that you've seen the film. Okay, so I just wanted to share this really quick story about this film and my introduction to it. Now, I was living in the United States when I was younger, when I was a child. And I must have been, I'm not sure when exactly it was, but maybe it was around the time I was in maybe just finishing middle school, American middle school, or maybe just starting high school, or maybe I just was about to start high school. So around that age, I was at my home in the US, and I was watching TV one day, and I think it was, I hope I get this right, I think it was American Movie Classics, AMC. There was a channel in the US where they showed these movies. And one day I saw a little short commercial where they said, oh, next week or something, the film that they're gonna show is the film Once Upon a Time in the West. Now, at this point, I had never seen Once Upon a Time in the West. I'd never even heard of Once Upon a Time in the West. I knew of the Dollars trilogy films, the Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns directed by Leone. I knew of those, and I saw them because my father was a huge Western fan, and he in particular loved the film The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And I think that love rubbed off on me because I ended up loving that film very much as well. But I wasn't a huge spaghetti western expert by any means. I was just a kid. So when this advert or commercial came on this channel, advertising that the film Once Upon a Time in the West would be shown whatever it was, next week or the following day or whenever, I was very excited because I recognized the name Sergio Leone and I saw the cast. It was an amazing cast. Henry Fonda and Charles Bronson. And there was another name, Claudia Cardinale, and I didn't know who she was at the time because, as I said, I was still perhaps not as experienced with watching as much movies. But I knew Charles Bronson and I knew Henry Fonda. So this was very exciting to me. So I said, wow, this is great. There was a VCR and I could record it. So I get a little blank VHS tape and get ready. So I was very excited. But this was before internet. This was before anything I could do to look up the film and what the film was about or anything. There was no YouTube or anything like that. So until the time of the broadcast, I didn't know anything about the film other than the title and the fact that Charles Bronson and Henry Fonda were starring in it, and it was directed by Sergio Leone. That's all I knew. And so I was basically, had no idea what the film was about. So time came for the actual broadcast. So I was very excited. It was must have been maybe an afternoon on a Saturday or Sunday, I want to say, because I was home. And I remember not going out, but I was so excited. I wanted to stay in. And it was a nice day outside, but I wanted to stay in because I wanted to watch this movie. So the time came and I made sure the VCR was recording, and I recorded it. And off we go. And the film starts. And as you know, the film begins with this long, drawn-out title sequence where you have the men in the dusters waiting in the deserted station for the train to come in. And on the train, of course, is Charles Bronson, harmonica. So already I was mesmerized by this film. And I had no idea what to expect. All I knew is I knew Charles Bronson was there, and I was already quite captivated. It was a little bit strange, I must admit, because I wasn't quite sure. I didn't quite get my bearings because everything was drawn out, as I say, because that title sequence is just agonizingly long in an excellent, superb, suspenseful way, of course. But it's just agonizing. Everything is drawn out, and it's so lovely. I love how the tension is just thick. Wonderful, wonderful. Leone is a master at this. Okay, so then we have the conclusion of that title sequence. And then, as you know, the film cuts to the scene at the McBain farm. And so, or not a farm, it's the McBain home. And they're getting ready for some kind of celebration. So, and you've got the family, you've got the father and the wonderful red hair and the older son and the younger daughter, Maureen, and the very little boy. So it's a big family, and they're expecting someone to arrive. And it's outdoors, and it's like a picnic or something. And so it's a very idyllic scene, potentially. But suddenly, it turns very nasty, and it is ambushed. It is subject to an attack by these men, these marauders, these people in these long menacing dusters who come from the sagebrush, and they just shoot all the kids, and they shoot the father, and all is left is a little boy standing there. And then the huge rush of the Morricone song, the score comes in, that beautiful, awesome, awe-inspiring track of music. It's absolutely just one-of-a-kind experience. The first time I heard that music, I just got a chill. I was frozen, absolutely frozen. Couldn't believe what was going on. And you know, the sound of the gun, it has that odd after-dubbed kind of echoed sound of the gun. You know what I mean? It's not quite real. It's very theatrical, and I love that. I love the huge popping, echoing sound of the guns as they're used, the sounds of guns in this film. And then remember, you got the guns, the shots, and then the people falling down, and then the father's trying to reach for his gun, but he's shot down again, and he falls down, and you hear the cluck of chickens, and then you get the rush of the point of view shot of the little boy as he runs outside, and you get a close-up of his face, and then boom, the music crashes in. Amazing. And you see the wind, and suddenly you see from the distance emerge from the brush, one at a time, these men in these dusters and the hats. And they come in and they wait, and then in the distance, at the very center, you see one man emerge. And then the music is swelling, and they slowly walk, and the man from the center emerges, and he just gives his long gun to one of his cohorts, and he just walks forward in the center, leading the pack of these killers towards the little boy who's just standing there. And the music is just rushing to its crescendo. And all along, we don't see their faces, but we see this man, and he's got this menacing, almost angelic walk. And I was seeing this film, and I just was mesmerized. I couldn't believe what was happening. This was an unbelievable experience. And then I remember, this was the moment I remember. It cuts to the little boy just standing there petrified. And then you see the man with the hat, the leader of the pack, from the back. You don't know who it is, but do you remember this moment? It's probably the most famous shot in the film. The camera slowly turns. And as the music swells to its climax, the camera turns. And then we see that the killer, the leader of this pack of killers, is none other than Henry Fonda. Frank. That is Henry Fonda. I couldn't believe it. This was one of the biggest shocks I think I ever had ever when I was watching a film. And it was such a shocking thing. I couldn't believe it. It's Henry Fonda. So I thought, he's got to be a good guy. He has to be a good guy. But no, he's Frank. And then the scene, of course, is topped off with that terrible moment of one of his men says, "What do we do with this one, Frank?" And then Frank's smile just fades, and he spits, and he says, "Now that you've called me by name," right? Because Frank is his name, and he points a gun, takes a gun out of his holster, and points his gun at the little boy, and then he smiles again. But this time, the smile is of a completely different character, and boom. There is every time I think about this film, I shivers. And whenever I talk about this film, I always resist. I never ever mention the fact that Henry Fonda plays a bad guy. I never want to mention that fact, because I always remember to this day the joy and the delight and the horror and the surprise and the shock that I felt when I first realized, upon that sweep of a camera move, that Henry Fonda was the bad guy. And so the last thing I would want to do is I don't want to deprive that same feeling, potentially, from another person who has yet to see the film. So I never ever mention the fact that Henry Fonda plays a bad guy. And I make sure not to mention that. There's actually a clip of an interview that Henry Fonda did on the television program, the interview program, Parkinson. And I'll leave a link down below to the clip on YouTube so you can watch it. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And it explains exactly the moment that I realized that Frank was Henry Fonda, the bad guy. Because Henry Fonda is talking about why Sergio Leone cast Henry Fonda in this evil role of Frank. Because Henry Fonda was trying to put contacts in his eyes to make his blue eyes more maybe dark and sinister. He wanted to grow a mustache and beard and a divot or something to make him look menacing. But Sergio Leone didn't want it. He wanted Henry Fonda with his blue eyes and his Henry Fonda charm because he wanted to shock his audience. That moment when the camera turns and it reveals that Frank is Henry Fonda. So Sergio Leone wanted the audience to realize that at that moment, after this huge massacre of a family, and the camera turns, he wanted the audience to say, "My gosh, it's Henry Fonda." So he wanted that shock. And you watch that clip. It's a great clip. Chances are, if you've seen the film, you already know what I'm talking about. But I'll leave the clip down there anyway. It's fascinating. It's the exact expression of how I reacted when I saw that moment for the first time. And I've seen the film so many times since. I love the film to bits. One of these days I'd love to talk about this film in detail, but I love this film to bits. And I will never, ever forget the sublime joy that I felt, the thrill, the rush that I felt when I found out that the cold-blooded killer was none other than Henry Fonda. One of the greatest moments I've ever had as a viewer of films. So lovely, and I will never ever forget that as long as I live. Okay, my friends, sorry about that. That's just a one-shot thing, just a short little memory that I have of this film. Maybe I will try to do this with other films going forward, just to share a little piece of a memory that I have, that's something that I cherish about a particular film. And let's see where it takes us. In the meantime, if you have any thoughts or comments about this film, I'd love to hear it. Already I've heard from many people about this film, Once Upon a Time in the West, and I've had some nice discussions already. But if you want to talk with me further about this film or that particular scene that I was speaking about, then please let me know. And I would love to engage in conversation with you, my dear friends. Okay, that's it. I don't want to bother you anymore, so I'm very sorry for taking up some of your time. I know you're very busy, so please be happy and healthy and well. Stay safe, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Until we meet again, my friends. Cheers.